All right, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Big Doug and Carmi Show, your one-stop shop for all things Commanders. It's a Football Friday, and our guest today from ESPN is Ajay Atayi. AJ, thanks for doing this, man. It's overdue for this episode here.
First time, long time. What's up, guys? Thank you for having me on, man.
Absolutely. You're right. It is the first time. We always take the first episode with a new guest to get to know you a little bit because it's more than football. We like to be friends here. So you kind of got started out in the DC area with a lot of names that people will be familiar with. I think people don't realize how much was produced or came out of the DMV area, like in that mid to late 90s in the media. Tell us how you got started there, kind of with NBC Sports Washington, and how you're up in ESPN now doing a lot of good works behind the camera.
For sure. I mean, again, thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate you so much. I'll try to zoom through it real quick, not so I don't bore anyone. But I'm a Virginia kid. I grew up in Springfield, VA. I went to school at VCU in Richmond, and then my first job out of college was at 106.7 The Fan. I was just like a weekend producer there. I worked with Scott Jackson and B. Mitch. It was one of the first shows I ever produced when B. Mitch was originally with The Fan before he went to 980. And then eventually kind of worked my way up to the assistant producer on LeVar and Dukes on 106.7 The Fan. So I worked on that show for a couple years. And then after that, I was the lead producer for Grant and Danny when they started as a show. So I was the first producer for that show when they took over. And I love those guys, and it was awesome working with them. And then after a few years, I went to school for TV and I wanted to get back into TV. So there was an opportunity to jump over to NBC Sports Washington. So I went there 2014-ish and got to work with got to still work with the Sports Junkies. I was one of the producers. They did a show there called Table Manners for
I remember that
for a little bit. That was awesome. So love those guys. And then I got to work with B. Mitch, with Chick, with JP Finley, Pete Haley, and all those guys, and Mitch Tischler, of course, at NBC Sports Washington for 5 years until about 2019, 2020. And then at that point, I got a call from ESPN. They had an opening. I was friends with a few of the recruiters over there, and they pulled me over, and I've been with ESPN ever since. And ESPN, I've bounced around a little bit too. I did sort of Sports Center out the gate. I worked on a few different Sports Center shows, and then I got to work NFL Countdown, which is sort of like College Game Day, but that's the NFL version of that. So I got to do some really cool feature storytelling with them. And then for the last year, I've been with the E60 Group, which is more like a documentary, more
investigative journalism.
Yeah, again, more like journalism, more human interest, more like it's kind of serious storytelling. So that's sort of the career in a nutshell, right there. Hopefully, that wasn't too long.
No, not at all. I'm curious. I think people, I don't know if surprise is the right word, but when you get up to the mothership there are so many more people behind the scenes and there are in front of the scenes. What do you think people get wrong about the dynamic of what it is that takes all the people that are behind the camera to make those shows work?
Yeah, there's so much thought, there's so much preparation. I feel like maybe I would have assumed before I started working at ESPN that they didn't even know about this, like Washington did this and no one's even paying attention and this and that. And no, they see everything, right? People inherently, there's so many eyes, there's so many ears, there's so many super talented people who've dedicated their whole lives to consuming sports in a certain way, and then being able to read and react and then output that back into sports centers. And I would have maybe assumed that they weren't as prepped and weren't as buttoned up as they were, but I was dead wrong about that. I also think I didn't realize how many different things that they're sending back out into the sports universe, from documentaries to full films to daily sports podcasts to it's such a vast environment of content creation that it's hard for me to even like as an employee to like keep up with all the things that ESPN does.
Well, I remember we had Clinton Yates on the show one time, and I
For
was
sure.
asking about
Love
Around the Horn.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Clinton Yates, on your new show, by the way. And he was telling me about the binder that they would get for Around the Horn, and like things like that you'd never think about, like that they were given so they could scour through and pick up notes and stuff. So just like the preparation from other people to make people successful, I always found very interesting about what a humongous corporation like that looks like.
Dude, yeah, and like to your point, like we would get for Sunday NFL countdown, like Sunday night, like as soon as the Sunday night games end, like we would get this packet from like our three full-time researchers who work on that show, and it's like every little angle, every little nugget, every little thing that like, you know, if I would have thought of one of these things like on my own, I would have felt like a genius, but it's like a list of 50 of them for like the games that just happened and then the matchups coming for next week, where they're planned out like 3, 4, 5 weeks ahead of time with the facts, with the information, with the previews, with, you know, the matchup breakdowns. Like, you know, it's just a credit to like, again, how many like smart people way smarter than me who work at companies like this and make people who are on TV who are also talented but make them look smart. You know, it's just
absolutely. Yeah. I think it's fascinating, by the way. I think ESPN is so vast and there's so much coverage for everything they do. I'm curious how the perception of the Commanders and even DC as a city market has evolved over the past couple of years. We saw Dan Snyder leave from ownership. Josh Harris took over. Daniels is being successful now. Just, you know, sorry, having your feet on the ground, how has the perception of the Commanders changed over the past couple of years?
You know, this is all subjective, obviously, right? This is my opinion, and, you know, different people might feel differently, but it feels like they're fun again, right? Like it feels like, you know, and like I felt like this when I was covering the team, living in like being local, like regional in like the DC area. It just felt like if there were any positive stories, like there would be 3 other things that were not football related that would also get attached, right? Mm-hmm. Like the football thing was like the 3rd thing on the list behind like, you know, congressional like inquiry and like, you know, something else unfortunate that would happen with the team. And then like, oh, by the way, they're also, you know, they like young player played well this weekend. And it feels like they're just another team now, which like, I think for people like us, like you can just worry about football, right? Like when was the last season that we went through where like you went through the whole year without worrying about like either locker room issues, again, stuff way far removed, like business issues, you know, things that had nothing, that weren't anywhere close to football. Like what was the last time we got to sit back and like actually just enjoy that, right? And it feels like the last couple of years, like we've been able to do that, right? And we sort of like, I've been trying to appreciate the fact that that's the case now, right? That we can just be normal football fans, you know, tune in on, like watch during the week, see, you know, see what to expect and just tune in on Sundays and not feel like there's all this baggage that comes along with being a fan of the team, you know. And so I would say the same way that's changed for us, I think it's changed nationally, right? They're a fun team to cover. They're a fun team to feature now too, right? Like you can put them front and center in a segment and feel good about that and not feel like, oh, well, you know, we also have to mention this, you know, investigation or this or that that's going on with the team. Like you can just talk football and that's it. And like, I love that.
Absolutely.
You brought up, I thought it was interesting, you brought up Chick Hernandez earlier. We watched the Josh Harris interview the other day. Chick Hernandez is the last person that got to sit down with Daniel Snyder. It was almost 20 years ago. When you think about that, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah. And of course it was Chick, right?
Yes. I love Chick.
Knocks on all the doors. I know. Love Chick. Chick's Chick. He is, you know, Chick's somebody I grew up watching on Fox 5 when I was a little kid.
100%.
I used to watch like the George Michael's Sports Machine, and then I would watch Chick on Fox 5 with Feldy, and like you know, Chick was somebody I grew up watching, and then I got a chance to work with him and got to know him, and you know, so of course it was him, but yeah, I mean, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Josh Harris or like working around him yet, but It feels like, there was a video that somebody put out before the NFC Championship game where it was sort of the reacts of Detroit, and it was him like in the tunnel when everybody, like the players running out, and just see his face and see how excited he was. Like I'd never really taken time to like think about that before, but like I remember being like, damn man, like I love that. Like in that moment, I was just like, I can connect with him, and like he's so relatable in that way that like he was the happiest person in the world because his team just won, and there's no ulterior motive. There's no anything else. Like it's just like pure joy, right? And
and he's hanging out with Jeffrey Wright and all the people that are back around the organization, and it makes you think like, how on earth did Dan Snyder not get that this was supposed to be the best job ever and lots of fun? And then if you did it right, like everybody would be there with you there, chest bumping in the hallway. Like that, it's one of the most amazing things that I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah. I just love seeing them have fun, right? I love seeing them like enjoy, and it's just like it goes from the top down, right? You see him acting like that, everybody else in the front office, to the team staff, to the players, like it really does. Like leadership is so important, man. And that's something I've learned, from ESPN to like the sports teams that we root for. Like I used to think like, who cares? It doesn't matter. If you have Michael Jordan, you've got X superstar player, like that's all that matters. You win championships and no one else cares about the rest. But like, that's not true. Like leadership is so important.
AJ, on top of that, prior to going on the show, you talked about in '96, you go into a game, you fell in love with the team, it became a part of your culture, right? I'm just curious, what did this season mean to you? Like in regard to this, having a successful 12-5 year, going to the NFC Championship, and what are your thoughts on just the entire, like the rebrand, the refresh coming up with Josh Harris coming up?
What the season meant to me, I would say it meant a lot, man. This was obviously, I've been a fan. They've won Super Bowls in my lifetime. I was like 6 months old when they won.
I was young too.
And then I was like 2 or 3 when they won in the early 90s. And then, so I was obviously not a fan. This is the best season they've had since I've been I've been a fan, and it meant a lot. The thing that I really loved was like how much it brought like all my aunts, my uncles, people who like sort of had rooted for the team in the 90s, and and when like a lot of my family had like sort of immigrated to this country and like settled down into like the Northern Virginia area, like the Washington football team was such a like prominent thing.
Absolutely.
Right? Everybody was a fan, and everyone had flags in front of their houses and stickers on their cars, and to see that sort of like degrade over the last like 20, 30 years, and every little kid roots for, seeing little kids in elementary schools rooting for the Eagles and other teams, or 49ers, whoever's good at the moment. And half my like younger cousins are all Ravens fans. It felt good to sort of just give those people who've been rooting for something that hasn't paid them back, to see them get a little bit of validation, right? Like I love that. Like I love my uncle who had never given up on the team. Me and him are just like texting nonstop through the games again, and that had sort of stopped for a few years. And like, all of a sudden games became like a family thing. Like, my parents would make fun of me and my brother for being fans of the team. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, they're playing, and I go home a lot. I live in Connecticut, but I go home to Virginia a lot. And, it's Sunday, like we're not doing anything else. We're all like this year, like we're in front of the TV and we're watching the game, and our whole Sunday's planned around,
absolutely,
around the game. And like, I was always a fan. Like I never gave up on the team, but to just see fans like be rewarded back for their loyalty and sticking with the team. Like you love to see it,
And to touch on that real quick, to interrupt you real quick, sorry to bother you there, but we have a shared experience, right? So my parents came over to America. They immigrated in the 1970s, and it was like the team was thriving in the early 80s, right? And I feel like they just kind of latched on to American society. And they're like, hey, this is what's popular here, the DC team, let's get into it. And it's like my mom is an Arabic 78-year-old woman, and she'll call me the day after the game. Like, have you seen number 5? And she'll talk to me about the game, because growing up in the 80s and 90s, we see these bumper stickers and these flags, and we see a revival here in DC. And still being local now, it's awesome seeing that energy. Just fantastic. I love the whole the verbiage and the texting going back and forth. It's fantastic. We needed this.
We needed this, man. And I there was like a video I saw yesterday of like this like 98-year-old lady watching like the Doink against the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
And to see like her, like just people like that who haven't been repaid for like how much they've put back into this team for so long, to see them like light up and like see that joy. And there's like only so many things in your life that can really like give you, like outside of your family, obviously, that can give you like that, like just like, oh my God, like let's go, like, it made me so happy, man. And I just hope that this is the first of many, right? Like fingers crossed that we're, this is like the beginning of something really good.
So Josh Harris doubles down yesterday on his way to the honors about moving on from the old name, but kind of also throws out that they do want to respect the past in some sort of way with the uniforms, assuming that name and logo never come back, is giving the fans that want that the old uniforms, just giving them something to hang on to, and they will still ask for more, or is it the right way to go?
I feel like there's a certain part of the fan population that's not going to be happy no matter what, right? Like unless you go 100% back to the name, the old logo, they won't be happy. I'll share like a story of my own experience that really changed this, like how I think about this. I want to say this was like 2017, 2016. We were, I went to there were a group of Native Americans who were coming to do like a ceremony on the field. And we, I showed up early. I was at the field on game day, and they were sort of practicing. And I just remember like what went through my mind when I saw them practicing on the old logo. And I just remember feeling like really like bad about it, And I remember feeling like, man, like this isn't right, And I would say my attitude towards the name was a little more like apathetic before then. Like I was like, it is the name. Like I can't change it. I'm not actively for it or against it. And then at that point I was just like, a reasonable adult can look at this situation and say like, this is wrong, right? Regardless of your affiliation and your sentimental tie to the name and what it meant to you or your family. Like, I think we could all like just look at that objectively and think like there's something wrong with this picture, right? So that being said, like I also wanted to say, as somebody who's like active on Twitter and like sees a lot of these comments, I feel like half of them are not like originally like Washington fans. They're not like Skins fans. They're like, it's like online trolls who like have a thing to like latch onto and like, like, oh, I'm never going to be a fan of this team again with my like 60 followers and, following 700 people. And like, I'm never going to do this. Or like, you've lost me. Like, it's fine, man. I think, acknowledging some of that through like old school memorabilia, and potentially, bringing back the white jersey and the home and away jerseys that are a little bit more like that, like Gibbs era, like, Washington jersey. Like, I love that because I think it looks great, beyond just like the nostalgia. Like, I think those look awesome. But I don't think making everybody happy should be the goal here. I think it's like, you need an adult in the room to make the decision for like, what's the best thing for the franchise this year and for the next 20 or 30 years, not, what's going to make, Twitter troll X feel better or get out of his feelings about,
Is there a difference between the name and the logo in your mind?
That's interesting. I'm not sure. I feel like no. I'll also say this. Like, I think I saw somebody say this right after the season ended. Just if, I was somebody who wanted like Red Wolves, like I thought that was a cool name, or Wolves in general, and they, it was sort of, the question was asked, like, would that have made this season any more enjoyable for you?
Yeah, right.
And the answer to me was no.
No, not to me. Yeah.
Would this have made any of this better? No. And at no point at all during the season did I think about the name for a second. And like, if you ask me like, hey, is it the best name ever? Like, no. But also like, I feel like this is sort of a moment for us to just like look at and move on. Because I feel like if we go through this process again, you're just going to have another group of people who aren't happy with whatever that result is. And then it's like a new thing. And then they're going to want to change it again. And I feel like this is like this season should sort of just be like a benchmark, like moment in time for us to sort of like wash away the last like 20, 30 years of everything. The name changed, horrible, like off the field stories, the losing, like just like, clean slate, and like, this is the team. This is,
Hey, you got Clinton Yates texted me, in order to do that, they also need to change the red, white, and blue.
Say that again.
You got Clinton Yates, when they changed the name to Commanders, texted me and said they ought to also, if they want to make a clean break, they need to change the red, white, and blue as the rest of the DC sports teams.
I love Clinton. I've known Clinton for a long time. I knew Clinton when he was like the Washington Post Express reporter, like for the edition that just goes on the Metro, right? Like, I've known Clinton for a long time. I disagree with Clinton there. We respectfully disagree. I don't think whatever you do, you can't get rid of the colors. To me, colors,
that's a nostalgia.
Greater than sign logo, greater than sign team name. Like, the colors are the team identity, right? More than anything else. Like, you can't get rid of that.
I think we had Cakes on here on Monday, right? Was it Cakes on Monday? I believe, Doug. He's awesome. He's real cool, man. Really down to earth. We had a conversation, and I think Josh Harris, the success of the team changed the trajectory of the name, in my opinion, right? I feel like when he bought the team the first year, he was like, you know what? I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to kind of see what the metrics turn out, see how the season turns out. But the fact that we were 12-5 and Jaden Daniels was a superstar and he's like a rocket, he's a comet. Everybody wants to follow that trajectory. I think the momentum's all with the team now, and you can't stop that. You have to let it go and just let it play out. I think it's the perfect marriage of, having a little nostalgia with the jerseys, sticking with the name. It's the best of both worlds. I think there's going to be a lot of momentum moving forward. I'm really excited about it.
I think I tweeted out today that the most important name right now is Daniels. And you can see that because he's the #1 selling jersey in America. They posted UK and Ireland today. He's the #1 selling jersey. Like, that's the name that matters at this particular moment, is Jaden Daniels. And you can say, I think Nike signed up today. I mean, it's, George, you said a comment. That's about the right description for it, for sure.
Absolutely.
Dude, you hit the nail on the head, right? Like, this, a name change serves what function, right? Like, especially if it's a name that's not bothering anybody, it's to appease the fans. And the thing that appeases fans more than anything is a winning, successful team, right? And if you're successful, you've already appeased the fans. Like, people are good at this point. It's like, if they would have just had another 3-win team and it's not going the way you want, and at that point, the name changes discussion is probably way more prevalent. But like, at this point, like, what are we talking about? Like, I'm good. Is it my favorite name ever? No. Like, can I live with it? Clearly, because we just went through the season and it was awesome. And not one time was I like, man, this is great, but I really wish they would change the name. Like,
Nah, never.
Yeah.
So
go ahead, George.
I was like, let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk some ball a little bit, right? I know you're doing some work and you're kind of heavy doing some production. Are you still actively a fan of the team? Are you familiar with the needs of the team? I was kind of curious about that. I'm sure. There you go. Perfect. Okay. And with that in mind, what does the team need? Or are we trying to get Myles Garrett on the team? What are your thoughts on that?
So I did a feature with Myles Garrett 2 years ago. We went to his house and I got to like spend a night with him. And him and his boys were playing Dungeons and Dragons. And Myles is like the biggest nerd you've ever met. Like, he's also like such a enthusiastic guy, and like anything he does, I feel like most of the time you look at like Adam Peters, right? And I don't know how much like credit or whatever to assign to certain moves that San Francisco had made while he was there. But like you look at McCaffrey, you look at Trent Williams, you look at like some of those moves. Like, they didn't give up a first round pick in any of those, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it was value based. Like they were able to get McCaffrey without giving a first round pick.
I didn't realize that. Okay, Williams. Interesting.
That being said, they did trade up for Trey Lance, and they like gave up a ton in that. You know, who gets credit for what between him and John Lynch, who was ahead of, you know, like I don't know 100% there.
The shots. Yeah,
who calls the shots on those individual moves? But 99 times out of 100, I would say like don't do it. But Miles is the guy. Like he would be the one.
Special.
You know, if you're going to do this, like he would be the one. I would pull the trigger for, because he's just like that's the guy we thought that Chase Young was going to become, right? Like the guy that you plug in, and it just, you look around the league and you look at some of these recent teams who've won Super Bowls, like as much attention as we pay to Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, like a big reason they won a few of those Super Bowls is Chris Jones is wreaking havoc,
absolutely,
you know, on the other side of the ball. And you know, all of a sudden the other team has a chance to make a run and maybe tie it up or maybe go ahead, you know, after Patrick Mahomes just did his miracle, you know, at the end of the game drive, and it's Chris Jones forcing fumbles or destroying the pocket and letting other guys like Karl Loftus or whoever get to the quarterback. So like, I think that's the recipe for success, right? And then before them, like the Rams, right? The Rams with what Aaron Donald, right? If Cincinnati probably has a Super Bowl on their trophy case right now if it's not for Aaron Donald. Like there's you need that component, right? And a part of me like thinks like, you know, let's try to draft that guy instead of like signing someone else's. But if someone like that is available and he's like such a generational, like you literally plug him in and your window opens up for potential Super Bowl, and you know that he's like, I've argued this for like the last few years. I think Myles Garrett is the best athlete in the NFL, in the whole NFL.
Yeah,
right?
he's a freak.
If you could clone anybody in the NFL right now, like that guy with like a 30+ inch vertical, being almost 300 pounds, is big and is wide. Like, dude, I'm telling you, he's
sculpted,
as wide as a table, but he's so nimble and athletic at the same time. Like, and he's got that drive and that push to like be great. Like he's going to be a Gold Jacket Hall of Famer, and
no question.
Doesn't feel like he's slowing up anytime soon. So, I would say like it's all relative to the price. Is it going to cost 3 first-round picks? At that point, I'm probably out. Is it going to cost this year's first and a second? Like I would be more open to listening to that. Like, could it be, you know, a first this year and a player and maybe a mid-round pick? Like I would feel best about that. But I feel like the bidding war is going to drive that price up a little bit. So, I would love Myles Garrett here. You know, I would say, you know, outside of that, obviously like pass rushes is like a huge need. And I'm pretty plugged in. I would say I'm in like our lads like all the time. I'm like looking ahead to like 2025, like free agents and who's available, who is Dan Quinn coached in the past that potentially could come over, you know, is DeMarcus Lawrence a possibility for, you know, this year? Is he somebody like if you know, some of the higher priced defensive linemen on the team, like if they're no longer on the team next year, like who are the guys who could come in and replace? Like pass rush, I think is huge. I think, you know, I want to also say this is, you know, maybe hot take a little bit. You know, I feel like Marshawn Lattimore just got crushed by the fans all year this year. And I feel like if I look at a few games, including the win against the Eagles, that Detroit game, like the win against the Eagles at the end of the regular season, like he got 2 really, I thought bogus call PIs, but like down the stretch in that game, there were a couple huge third downs where Pickett like put the ball on the money to AJ Brown, and Lattimore like contested the catch and broke them up, and they were able to get off the field, right? And the Eagles weren't able to score, including on like that fumble in the fourth quarter. I think the Eagles got the ball back. Lattimore broke up a third down conversion attempt to AJ Brown, and I was like, dude, like there you go. Like
he has those elite qualities. We just have to hope that he's not, you know, he wasn't fully healthy this year. Maybe next year he'll be a better player in regard to that. We'll see.
But I also think that, like, just again, like watching a ton of like national football, like there's no such thing anymore as like a full-on shutdown corner. So I feel like
yeah,
we see like somebody give up a touchdown and you're like, this guy is a joke. Like, oh my God. Like, I think what I want to see, like, I want to see you compete. I want to see you be in position. And I want to see like you not below the coverage and this guy's running 40 yards down the field by himself. Like, if you are step by step and Hurts, like that fourth down against the Eagles where Hurts like threw one of the best balls I saw anyone throw all season, like that little like moon ball to AJ Brown to the sideline. Like, that was a perfect throw. It was an unbelievable catch. It was just like, you know, similar to like that Jaden Daniels to De'Ami Brown like third down conversion against the Lions where like De'Ami had his eyes covered. Like, you can't be mad about that. Like, you're step for step, you're right there. Like, there's no such thing as a shutdown corner anymore. You want somebody who's going to compete, who's going to be in position. But if I'm watching Pat Surtain, I see Pat Surtain give up a touchdown a week. Like, people forget. Like, I remember being a Champ Bailey fan. Champ Bailey would get diced up by Amani Toomer, but you weren't like, all right, get Champ Bailey off my team. Like, I remember Champ Bailey giving up like 2 touchdowns to Amani Toomer every time they played. It felt like he would just kill him. Yeah. But it was like, you know what? Like, but he's going to make more plays than plays he gives up. He's going to be in position to at least challenge these challenge like the receptions and like, you know, and then he brings like the attitude to the defense too. So I just feel like he got a bad rap, but I would see like, obviously if there's ability to add anything to the secondary in terms of like Jeremy Chin played well. Like, is he going to get extended? Is he going to come back? I think he was on a 1-year deal, right? So he's a free agent. Like, what are you going to do with your safeties? It feels like they have a lot of bodies, but is there anyone there you really want to move forward with?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that a draft priority? Do you go, you know, you like Mikey Sanders still had such a great year. Like, do you leave him on the outside? Do you, you know, do you go get another
corner?
Yeah, another outside corner. Like, are you, you know, what do you prioritize? For me, again, I think defensive line. I look at how teams like the Eagles sort of build out, and you know, I would say for you, like for Washington, it feels like build from there out. Like, it feels like they're about to go through a big transition with the defensive line. There's a lot of, you know, high cap number guys. There's a couple guys on short-term deals. Like, build from there out. They kind of started that with Newton. You know, it feels like he's a piece that could be a potential starter moving forward, but like, go find your superstar. If that's a trade with Myles Garrett, or if that's trying to draft like a super talented rookie, like that kid from Marshall who looked awesome during all like the Senior Bowl stuff. Like,
Mike Green, I think, right?
Yeah, Green. Yeah. So like, you know, that would be how I would move forward. And then like, I don't know. I also am like, I feel a certain way about like going and try to sign like a T Higgins or anybody like that. Like, take that money, invest it in.
Yeah, he's going to make $32 million a year. It feels like a lot of money for your number 2. I guess you're going to have to give Terry some kind of extension. He's coming up, so 32 feels like a lot.
You got to.
And people talk about the cap room they have and forget that like there's 60% of the roster is going to turn over again this year. Like, a lot of those guys are not under contract again this year. Guys like Bobby Wagner, to your point, Chin, if he wants to come back, Fowler was on a 1-year deal. Like, a lot of those guys were on 1-year deals, and I think it's interesting.
It's a credit to Peters, right? Because you signed these guys who played really well, but now their deals are up and they're not going to come back cheaper than what they were.
That's true.
Coming off an All-Pro or coming off like a great season. Like, another guy, I think he's only under contract for – I thought he signed a 2-year deal. It could have been a 3, but like Louvu seems like somebody you want to extend too, right? Like,
3-year, I think.
You want to get ahead of some of those.
So 2 of the team option, I think, for Louvu.
Yeah. I'm all for like, go sign me, like, you know, or draft like a mid-round. Like, you need a speed home run threat at running.
Absolutely, running back 100%. It's a good class too.
Yeah, exactly right. There's so many like mid-round guys. You need a few more receivers to develop. Like, you know, I don't know, man. If I'm trading first for anybody, like, there's no way it happens, but I would have loved to have gotten Brian Thomas on the back end of the first round. I was really hoping he was going to fall in the draft, and then of course he blew up the way he did. So there's no way they'd trade him, but like, go get you a Brian Thomas, right? Like, in the draft. Like, don't try to sign T Higgins for $40 million a year. Like, go find your next T Higgins or Brian Thomas or like that guy, right?
And I think And I agree with you fully on Marshawn Lattimore, and they obviously had him with sights other than winning it all this year was not why he was brought here. The beauty to me about bringing him on is it allows you with that pick 29. Also, very odd doing the mock drafts at pick 29 was a lot more fun with pick 2 when we're just talking about mock drafts. But the nice thing about picking up Lattimore is it really does allow you to go best player available when they get to 29. Because, I mean, obviously, other than quarterback and Terry McLaurin, like you can use an upgrade literally in every position on the field.
Yeah.
Maybe not QB1 if that's Lattimore, but I mean, literally, other than that, you can replace anybody with an upgrade in my mind, which makes that acquisition that much more important because if not, you'd have been looking for both corners when the season was up.
And honestly, you like look around the league. Sorry to interrupt you, but like if you're starting a cornerback room with Lattimore and Sanders still,
it's good base.
You're not doing terrible, man. Like you know, there's a couple like the Eagles got a pretty good room. There's a few other really good ones. Obviously, Broncos are really good, but like you're far from the worst, man. You've got some talent to work with there, and including an ascending star in Sanders still. So like,
absolutely,
yeah. Like to your point, right, Doug? Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. Let's get to the big game before we get out of here. To me, it's the best player in the world versus the best roster in the NFL.
Yeah.
Usually, you take the best roster. I don't see how you bet against Mahomes until Mahomes says, "I'm not worthy of being bet on anymore." AJ, you feel how?
Yeah, man. I want, you know, as much as like Mahomes and the Chiefs are like the evil empire and, you know, it's so fun to like hate on them. I would do anything to not see the Eagles win.
Absolutely.
Like, and I feel like because I feel that way, I feel like they're going to win, right? I feel like the Eagles are going to like Jalen Carter's just going to blow the whole game up and not let Mahomes get in sync. And it's going to be like my worst fear is like this plays out the way that like the Buccaneers Chiefs Super Bowl played out, where it felt like Mahomes is under fire the whole game and they were just like living in the backfield, which I think like Eagles have the pieces to do that. And then it allows the Buccaneers from then or for the Eagles now, like they have the firepower to take advantage of those one or two breaks in coverage or, you know, slip ups to like hit a home run. Yeah. You know what I'll say? Like, I think the Chiefs win, but, you know, and I'm somebody who's been really hard on Jalen Hurts, like through his career, but that game against Washington, man, he diced them up. And there were like some really tough third down conversions, and that guy was super accurate. And when he's playing like that, like it feels like that team is really hard to beat. I mean, you have like the passing threat be on point, and like you don't need him to throw for 300 yards, but if you have Saquon doing what he does, and then you have Jalen like just being on target, like across the middle, picking up those third down conversions, like that team is really tough. So I mean, I think the biggest variable, right, is the Eagles defensive line against Mahomes. That they can interfere with him, like that's going to give them the best chance. I still think the Chiefs end up pulling it out because, you know what, like even though the Eagles roster is pretty good, I would say the Chiefs might have like the second best roster. You know, and those late round picks that they've had the last 5-6 years, like guys like McDuffie, guys like Karlaftis, like Bolton, like they pick up like stars and they develop as well, draft and develop as well as anybody else in the NFL. So like I think both of those rosters have, you know, just uber talent across the board, and it's, you know, who's going to make the biggest difference. And it, on the other side, right, can Karlaftis and Chris Jones and those guys, can they make life, you know, difficult for Hurts, for Saquon Barkley in the backfield, right? Like I think they equally could shut down the Eagles offense as much as we're, you know, kind of worried about the Eagles defense doing that to Mahomes and company.
You brought up a good point, actually. I listened to Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks the other day, and they were talking about it might be a surprisingly defensive matchup going into the game, guys. If we think of the offense, think of the high firepower. We have Vic Fangio defense going against the Steve Spagnuolo defense. And over the past couple of years, defenses have been dominant in the Super Bowl. We've seen Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick, Wade Phillips coming out there and kind of shutting people down. So it's going to be very interesting. I do want it's going to be a fun game. I just hope Saquon Barkley doesn't go crazy. And AJ, you nailed it, man. It was like you shared the angst of a DMV native. It's like I wanted Bills Commanders. I was like, once we lost, I was like, dude, no matter what happens, I don't want the Eagles to win it all. So we'll see what happens there.
And George, it's hard for me with the Eagles because I want to hate them. All my favorite Georgia Bulldogs are on the team.
Yeah, the Georgia Bulldogs.
Whether I'm supposed to be excited for those guys or not, I can't do it.
I love
my Commanders, I guess, a little bit more than the Bulldogs.
Yep.
I have here, I put in an underdog parlay for the Super Bowl. I thought we'd discuss them and let you guys laugh at me a little bit. Let's see. I've got Chris Jones. I took the over on half a sack.
I like it. That's not bad at all. Yeah, why not?
I took Xavier Worthy higher than 20.5 yards for his longest reception.
Ooh, for the longest reception.
For his longest reception.
Yeah,
that's a tough one. What's the plus and minus on that one? The payout. I feel like he's more of like a screen guy. I think he's more of a runner.
I feel like he's going to get the reverse or like the double reverse that's going to go for 30, 40 yards more than he'll get like catch a pass, right?
As long as he tosses it to him, I might be good on that one.
Okay, exactly. Hopefully. Yeah. For your sake.
Let's see. I got Travis Kelce scoring a touchdown.
I've seen 50-50. That's a popular one, right? I feel like a little bit of me would be nervous because I'm like, how do you that's the one guy you got to stop, but he's also the one guy who always ends up getting open. So
I took Jalen Carter to get a sack.
I think so. If he's healthy, I don't know if you guys saw the news the other day, but like he's some sort of illness right now going on. So if he actually plays, but he's a game wrecker. He's Aaron Donald reincarnate, man. He's a new generation right now.
I can't imagine that he misses the Super Bowl. It would have to be some kind of horrendous thing. I took Saquon Barkley scoring a touchdown.
I like it. Can't stop him, man. He's crazy.
Oh yeah, only thing working against you there is Mr. Tush Push. So
that's true.
That's why I also took Jalen Hurts for a rushing touchdown.
Easy. That's easy money.
Easy money.
Yeah.
Will they be able to do away with that? There's a push now because of no pun intended, because of the Luvu fiasco.
Yeah.
Has put more pressure on the league to take a look at this tush push.
Bro.
It helps when the quarterback squats 500 pounds, but I just don't see how you're supposed to stop it for half a yard.
You know how frustrating that was watching that in in the Eagles are literally doing playing with the snap count, trying to draw them off sides, and then the team like you have a team trying to draw you off sides, and you're threatening to give them a score because you're going off sides. Like that was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. And if that leads to the end of the tush push, like we're all better for it, man.
I agree with that.
Move on from this.
I feel like with the tush push, I'm not necessarily adamantly against it, but the fact that they bend the rules, like I don't know if I'm sure you guys saw that clip like 100 times. I frankly leave jumping over, but the center and the guards were over the ball. Sure. They were condensed on the offensive line. They weren't in their standard positions. Like maybe you can do the tush push, but you still have to adhere to the rules. Like have the neutral zone open and have the offensive linemen spread out a little bit. But like I just felt like it's starting to get a little bit gray right now.
And then in the middle of a game, like that's never going to be enforced 100%, right?
That's true.
When it's late in a playoff game and it everything's on the line, like those kind of things are going to get overlooked as long as that play is legal. So is all of this worth it for that to remain? Like, I don't think so, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Imagine how many touchdowns Saquon has this year. Imagine how great that historic year looks if there's no tush push and he's getting the same yard, because he's not going to miss a yard. He won't ever say it, but he had to have been pissed that he lost at least 10. At least 10. How did Hurts have 14?
15 touchdowns. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Maybe Saquon would have got the MVP. Maybe he would have got that MVP had they not tush pushed their way in every time. I mean, I think he would still take a trip to the Super Bowl in all that they did accomplish over whatever individual accolades, but I don't know. Who knows?
Is it odd that they still haven't figured out what the V in MVP stands for? They ought to I think they need to redo them, right? Like if it's just going to be a quarterback deal, then let it just be a quarterback. if it's for the numbers, I mean, I still think if you take Patrick Mahomes off that Chiefs team, they're not winning, they're not going 15-2.
Yeah.
So, the what's the Jamar Chase broke all the records. He didn't get offensive rookie of the year. It's just odd that it's hard to figure out what the metric is that we're going by. Poor Sam Monson's taking hell today from the 33rd team for not voting Jaden Daniels. He took Brock Bowers instead. It was interesting that Dan Quinn getting 5th feels inappropriate for a head coach of the year. He went from 4 to 12, but interesting awards last night.
Yeah, I thought the explanation, like I appreciated the guy who voted for Brock Bowers coming out and explaining that, but also feels like in his explanation he basically said that we overrate the value of a quarterback. Like that's sort of his central argument, right? We overrate the value of a quarterback. So, that's why he voted for Bowers having the greatest rookie tight end season of all time. And like, to me, that's so confusing because like, okay, you overrate it. Let's say you bring it down a little bit. Like you still could make the argument that Jaden just had the greatest rookie quarterback season of all time.
Absolutely.
And you still would
the winning.
And like the game differential between what they won last year to what they won this year. And
Absolutely.
you compare that. It just felt like, I don't know. Sometimes I like cynic in me thinks like that guy wanted the headlines. He wanted Sam Monson or whatever to be like the big talking point of today. And that's why like the person who didn't vote for Ichiro or the guy who didn't vote for like Jeter or whoever to be like the unanimous Hall of Famer, right? It's like a little bit of like selfishness because you sort of want to create the story. And like he wanted to sit here and explain why he thinks Brock Bowers' season was just as good. Or like if you asked him if he could pick one of those two, guys to start a team with, who is he picking? It's not going to be Brock Bowers. So
that's
cool.
Right.
He got his moment in the sun. Cool. Like, good job, man.
He obviously didn't get in first ballot. Is Eli Manning a Hall of Famer? I say no.
In my opinion on this has changed. I used to say hardcore no, but he's going to get in. I think maybe what's changed is like my acceptance of the fact that like it's going to happen, right?
Yes.
And like I don't know if he does 100% deserve it, but he's arguably, a top 5 all-time postseason quarterback. Like you even just look at what he's done compared to his brother in what Peyton postseason. Like, the postseason is king. You're the one who delivers in the playoffs. Like it's not like he was also like a complete scrub outside of that, but like, I used to really hold on.
500 record.
I was like, he was never an all-pro. Like that guy's like barely, like if it wasn't for popularity, like he's not even a Pro Bowl level player during the regular season. But the Super Bowls, the signature moments, being who he is now in such a like face of like an ambassador for the game of football, like he's gonna get in. Whether or not I want him to, like, whatever, he's gonna get in. Like and he, what? I would say this. If I was a Giants fan, I would probably be sitting here arguing that he deserved it all along.
No doubt. Absolutely. No doubt. All right, let's get out of here like this. AJ, what's the score of the Super Bowl on Sunday?
Give me
George, I'll ask you next.
Yeah, give me a little.
I like Chiefs 27-24 while everybody's thinking about it.
You stole it from me, Doug. That's exactly what I was thinking right there. 100%. I think there's going to be it's going to be a defensive battle with a couple explosions in the game is what I think is going to happen. I'm wishfully thinking Kansas City is going to win the game, but I think honestly in my heart, I think the Eagles are going to win, unfortunately. It's kind of where honestly, that's where I'm landing right now, but curious what AJ has to say.
Yeah, give me I hate this, man. I think it's going to be I hope this reverse jinxes them, but I think it's like Eagles 23, like Chiefs 21. Like I think it's like something in that range. Right? Like low scoring defensive game. The Eagles pull it out by like less than a field goal or less, right? Like I feel like it's going to be like a game that comes down to like conversions at the very end. So I think it's going to be Eagles. I hate saying that, but
yeah, me too. It's going to be a rough year.
Yeah.
AJ, this has been great, man. We appreciate you coming on. Maybe we get you back around draft time or something, but long time in the making. Well worth it. We appreciate you.
Thanks, man. I don't know if you guys noticed the swag too. My boy Dean, Native Tees. He like does like the craziest like Washington related gear. This isn't a plug for him at all. He's just like my guy and throws me these shirts sometimes. But I appreciate you guys, man. Thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure to chop it up. Like, give me a call anytime.
Yeah, no doubt. Thanks,
Thanks,
brother.
man. That's fun, man. Appreciate it, bro. See you.